Welcome to worship at St. Matthew Lutheran Church. We had a little trouble with our Zoom recording today, so I'm going to give to you the Old Testament lesson from Exodus chapter 20 and my sermon based on this text. Hear now the words of Exodus. God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of parents to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your town. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, but rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Have you ever had a clean break with the past? I remember heading to college as a freshman. I was so ready to have a new life beyond my high school and the town where I'd grown up. I was ready for a place where more people attended orchestra concerts than football games. I was ready to study alongside people who were passionate about their learning. I was ready for a new beginning. When I arrived at Oberlin Conservatory, I did enter a new life. I had a roommate to hang out with, but also we had to work out our boundaries, including the rule that if you used an alarm clock, it was your responsibility to stop its buzzing when it went off in the morning. I learned the expectations of the conservatory in my academic classes, sometimes with painful bumps in the road, like when I got back my first English paper and realized I needed to spend time with the writing tutor. College offered a lot more freedom than I had previously experienced, but I quickly realized that this was not an extended summer camp experience. I had responsibilities that went along with my privileges, and I had to figure out how to follow through. In today's Old Testament lesson, we read the familiar words of the Ten Commandments. I could preach 1,000 sermons on these commandments, but I'm interested in the context in which they occur. It's a story of a clean break with the past. In Exodus chapter 20, we stand with Moses and the people of Israel at a pivotal point in their history. The people had lived in slavery in Egypt for 400 years. God had seen their suffering and had sent Moses to lead them out of slavery in Egypt into freedom. Now Moses and the people stand together at Mount Sinai, and God renews the covenant that God had first made with Abraham and Sarah and their descendants. The Ten Commandments are a promise made on both sides: God's lasting commitment to Israel and their complete loyalty to God in return. It was an opportunity for the Israelites to make a clean break with their past in Egypt. They had been rescued by God and could claim their identity as God's chosen people, not slaves. But this was not so easy to do. As slaves, they'd been told what to do. They cowered in fear before Pharaoh. Life was hard, but it was uncomplicated. Outside Egypt, they had a lot of choices. God wanted a relationship of faithfulness, not fear. God wanted a people who would freely choose to follow God's ways, not slaves to order around. The Ten Commandments were an opportunity for the people to address these questions about how to live as God's people in this new era. On the other side of their clean break with the past, they needed to establish boundaries for living in both freedom and responsibility. They needed to establish a new normal. The new normal described in the Ten Commandments had two parts. The first part is often referred to as the first tablet, since the story goes that God wrote the commandments on 2 tablets of stone. These first commandments are all about how the people of Israel were to relate to God. The first commandment sets the tone. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. God claims first place in the lives of the people. Period. God is the provider, the liberator, the guide. Loyalty and love are the people's part of the bargain, including recognizing God's powerful name and keeping the Sabbath practice of reorienting yourself to God. The second tablet turns toward our relationships with other people and the world around us. These commandments protect families and communities from the worst of harm. The prohibitions against murder, adultery, stealing, lying, and jealous desire lead to a breakdown in relationships and community life. But within these commandments, there is freedom. The freedom to enjoy life without being consumed by negative emotions and behaviors. And so the Ten Commandments were God's attempt to start again with the people of Israel and to build back better after their long confinement in Egypt. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of the last in-person worship service we shared before the pandemic shut down. We have had a long period of confinement too. Thinking of this, I have been talking with people about whether the pandemic has been a clean break from the past. The answer has been mixed. Some say yes, it was a clean break in the sense that the pandemic stopped us in our tracks. As a result, in the past year, we've had to reevaluate almost everything that we do. We ask ourselves, is this necessary? What is the risk? How will other people be affected? We've had to both pare back our lives to essentials and at the same time, learn to be creative with the opportunities and resources that we have. But the other side of the question is, no, this hasn't been a clean break from our past. And the thought there was that the same problems that led us to this place persist in society and in ourselves. We want a clean break from inequity, but the pandemic has actually made the top 10%, and especially the top 1%, richer, widening the divide between rich and poor. We want an end to racism, but the pandemic has put a spotlight on the ways our institutions favor white people and put people of color at the back of the line. And in our personal lives, our social outlets have narrowed, highlighting the challenges within our own families and the baggage that we'd like to leave behind. And so, in many ways, we are still longing for a clean break from what holds us back. Perhaps that's why I feel so drawn to this passage in Exodus. Because despite the limitations of the people of Israel, God chooses to work with them. God saw their need for relationship, for guidance and freedom, for instruction and practice. The people of Israel at Mount Sinai were back at square one. They were given a new beginning. The 10 Commandments and the 40 years of wilderness living that followed were a chance to go back to school and to learn again what it means to be God's people. It was a chance to build back better than before. I think that we may be at a similar junction. The pandemic provides us with an opportunity to evaluate who we want to be and how we will get there. It's an opportunity to think again about how we live faithfully with God and how we will live in fairness and care for all members of the human family. We ask ourselves as individuals, families, and communities, what from our past do we need to leave behind? What aspects of who we have been do we want to keep? What have we learned during this time of pandemic that we want to continue? Perhaps it's not truly a clean break from the past, but it is at a minimum an opportunity for a major reset. Like the Israelites at Sinai, this wilderness time is an opportunity for us to go back to school, to listen carefully to God, so that we too may build back better, more faithfully, and with more freedom and joy. But mark my words, the wilderness is a challenging place. There is a lot of uncertainty in this time of new beginnings. There are lots of questions we still have to answer. A whole generation died before the Israelites got to the Promised Land, and we too have endured losses. Our temptation will be like that of the Israelites, to go back to Egypt. At least we're familiar with the confines of our existence. At least we know what they are. And so that's why the story of the Ten Commandments is so important. Because in it, God stands by the promise God has already made. God says, I am the Lord your God. I am yours and you are mine. Nothing can separate you from me. I am here to provide for you in the desert. I am here to lead you to the next place. I am here to help you build back better. God spoke these words long ago to the people of Israel, and God speaks them to us today. God is here to guide us in our journey from the things that enslave to greater freedom. God is here to provide for us what we truly need. Within these promises, we find relationship and purpose. God is for us, and we are for God. We can live and trust in that promise, and with God's guidance, build back better. Amen.